Manager told me to replace a hard drive over a phone with a user who has been known to screw it up or quit. So I quit. This was back in 2018. I was trying to find a job and I was getting desperate. I ended up getting a temporary job at a call center that did tech support for pharma sales reps. The first 6 months were fine. My contract kept getting renewed and it was going fine. They even onboarded a new client and I got to know them and they were wonderful. I ended up having a good relationship with them. As time went on, things were going a bit south. Things that we normally would not do, we ended up doing. As an example, doing hardware replacements over the phone, and we were bending over backwards for the OG client. The reason why was because contract negotiations were coming up, so they were trying to make themselves look good. So much so the second client was going to the wayside. So I was one of the new who handled their tech tickets for the second client. They were very appreciative. Not to mention at this time layoffs happened to some of the best people, and the trainer who trained me was also laid off. I never got told why. At my 1-year mark at the company, a user who has been known to fry laptops called in. His hard drive had failed and wanted it fixed. He was told he'd need to send the laptop in, but he did not want to. The agent sent him a hard drive and told him someone would walk him through it. Background on this guy is he fried other laptops doing this cause he wouldn't listen, and that agent always got fired. My boss told me I would need to be the one to do it, and I expressed concern and told him I did not feel comfortable doing it. He told me to try and it'll go fine. I told him no way was I doing it. He then said I would need to do it or quit my job. I told him fine, I quit. He then tried to talk to me about it and I shut it down. I told him I was quitting and I turned in my company stuff. The second client reached out to me a week later asking what happened. So I told them the truth. What I did not realize is that they were also in contract negotiations, so they pulled their contract and went to another outsourcer. So did the first company. I found out that first company was one of their bigger clients. So losing that hurt them. I don't know what really happened to anyone after that. It might not seem too exciting, but this was my malicious compliance I had. Well, you knew the choices were to be fired or to quit. Either way, you probably weren't going to have that job much longer. Quitting is a better choice, and you can cite it was dysfunctional environment that made you quit. Managers need to wise up and stop advising people to quit. It always leads to trouble for the company. Yet it happens all the time. People fail to realize that the threat of quitting is not a threat at all. It's just a wise suggestion that always comes back to bite the clueless manager who thinks that people will somehow cower and say, "No sir. I need this job. I'll do whatever you say. Sir. Sorry for questioning your orders, sir." That just doesn't happen with anyone who isn't a doormat and bad news managers. Most people aren't that submissive. You did well. You preserved your dignity and made those who scoffed at it regret it. The 2 biggest incidents I caused were in response to being disrespected. The results were disproportionate to the wrongs inflicted on me. But my intention in both cases was just to make a point and to assert my right to be treated fairly. The stupidity, culpability, weakness and incompetence of my targets made my efforts far more destructive than I anticipated. Not to mention at this time layoffs happened to some of the best people, and the trainer who trained me was also laid off. I never got told why. Because they have you doing the same work for less than that person was working for. This is typical call center speak. My company switched outsourcers. And since then I know for a fact new hires are making $5 per hour less than the employees hired before the switch. They will push out the experienced staff and hire people with less experience. The reason why was because contract negotiations were coming up, so they were trying to make themselves look good. As a tech, I hate when contracts are being negotiated, as my boss or the sales guy would always offer up services way outside the norms. Hey Nick_Tesla. We're in contract negotiations with client X. I need you to go to the CEO's ex-wife's house and recover her pictures. Her computer got ransomwared. I was able to find an old backup of the photos. Let's check and make sure these aren't cryptoed as well. And it was family photos, facial plastic surgery photos, and cowboy porn. All in the same folder. No separation at all. I told my boss that I would quit if he ever tried to get me to do a favor for contract negotiations again. This post got popular and I did not expect that to happen. A few asked how the laptop was damaged, so I'll try to explain. Note, hardware is not my forte. I studied cybersecurity. But what had happened, I found out, was the user did not ground himself, and so static discharge happened and it ruined the laptop. That agent got fired because although he told him how to ground himself, he did not verify user was listening. This place went to hell in a handbasket. It was not a good environment, and it was here I learned no job is worth this if they don't treat you like a human being. I just ended up focusing on school, and now I'm in an IT job I love. Mill drove me insane. But let's make sure she can't drive. When I met my now wife, I had lived out of home for 10 years and I was fiercely independent. However, my wife, 26 at the time, had never lived out of home and ran everything in her life by her mother. This mix was not good between my future Mill and I. We regularly fought. The Mill would coach my wife into how to manipulate me into things when she was over at her place visiting 3 nights per week. One time, when my wife was over visiting her, she ambushed her by taking her to the shop where I got her engagement ring. She went through the whole process to trade it in for an upgraded ring because she told her it wasn't good enough for her. Following this, she drove her home to our place and waited out the front with a book. She was waiting to see how her coaching would go on how to convince me. During this argument with my wife, I learned she was waiting out the front waiting. So I went and told her to beep off. That felt like a win. She always played the innocence card and denied everything. But my wife is a terrible liar and always told the truth about what really happened. The Mill also had terrible vision and refused to get vision testing for fear her license would be revoked. She had been in 1 or 2 accidents in the past few years at the time. Once I learnt this, I thought this was a perfect way to get some petty revenge on her. Maybe this would lead to less ambushes for my wife and less visits from her for me. I found the correct government department email address to send a confidential report that I thought she needing retesting and a medical review due to poor vision. This also felt great. Never found out if anything came of it, and I certainly never told my wife about this one either. Undefined. Edit 2. Thanks for the wise words, everyone. But don't worry too much. The Mill is no longer with us. There was non-COVID health issues at the start of the pandemic. Things have changed a lot. There is only 2 of us now in this relationship, and it's much nicer. Kids are on the cards. But we are deciding together. I wasn't allowed to have a relationship with her brothers or my Phil either previously. But now I'm regularly catching up with them and hanging out. They're cool. Life is very different. I felt guilty after she died that I disliked her so much. Maybe that's why I never posted anything like this before. But someone else's post reminded me of my experience. There's so many other stories of speeps you did like this one. It's sad your wife's mother died. But feelings are feelings. You can't really control how you feel. How you behave is another matter. Thank you for possibly getting a driving menace off the roads. If people did their job, once she was examined, I'm sure they would have pulled her license. I know once my Mill passed, the family has been so much closer for us. I no longer feel at odds with my 2 Sills, and we actually became really close these last 7 years. Granted, I have been in the family for 38 years. It may have felt like revenge, but what you did was actually a public service. You may have saved innocent people from injury or death. My wife and I were forced to make the same call about an aging family member with dementia. Turns out it's a common practice that nobody talks about. Don't feel guilty at all. You did the right thing with bonus vengeance. Well, here's to hoping you didn't play yourself. Meaning, here's hoping you did. Wait. Now I'm not supposed to think what the customer wants? So 2 malicious compliances in 2 weeks. New record for me. This can serve as a sequel to my previous malicious compliance. As the cast and the premise is the same. Just reverse. As a quick catch-up, I work at a printing hub as a print and copy expert, working with the machines to get them to print, setting up files, and quality checking things before they come out. It is a pretty laid-back job. And I really enjoy the technical side of it. Not so much my coworkers, however. Don't get me wrong, however. I have no doubt they are good people. But I feel that they have settled into the job a little too much. And every little change gets them riled up. And then there is my manager, Kay, who is a good person at heart. But recently stress has been causing her to take it out on the employees. I stick with it because up until now she has been good. She at least deserves for me to stick through a stressful moment. Especially coming into holiday season. Anyways, the incident. 3 days ago I was working with a big color machine printer. A rather large job came in for 200 books. This particular job was a rush order and needed to get out the same day. And the value of the job exceeded over $2,000. It was also a very important client I have worked with in the past, so I wanted to be extra sure everything was okay. When I printed my proof and leafed through the booklet, however, I noticed rectangular boxes where text should have been. This is normally caused by our computers or printers missing the font that the customer had used. And I suspect they used a different font than they normally use for the Halloween season. Please, people, provide your print studios with PDFs, not Word documents, so I called up the customer to figure out the font they needed. No answer. Well, frick. The thing was, this order needed to start printing immediately in order to reach the deadline. Unless I dedicate using both color printers, we have to print the order, which is actually not recommended as the color calibrations are different on both printers. For some reason, I emailed the customer and put the order on hold. I knew the customer would want those fonts. Later on, my manager, who we will call Kay, asked me about why the order was still on hold. And I explained that the file was not correct. I even brought up the file and showed her. She agreed that the file was incorrect. However, she insisted on printing the order anyway. Kay, the order is a rush job. And they absolutely need that order immediately. Me, I understand that. But the file is wrong. If we produce the file and the customer rejects it, then we are out the money to produce the job. Kay, SLA is more important than a quality job. We won't get money if we fail to deliver on time. Me silently reminding myself that SLA includes quality. Kay, I have dealt with this client before. I know they will reject this. I am fairly certain they would prefer waiting a day to get their stuff rather than receiving something they can't use. Kay, Cole, just print the order anyways. Me dying inside. Yes, Kay. So, this is funny. Because last week Kay got after me about the exact opposite situation. There was an order we couldn't do correctly because our machines were dumping toner on the files. I assured Kay that I was certain the customer wouldn't mind the toner dump. But she said I wasn't thinking of the customer. I was thinking of the customer. As I was the customer. See my previous post for more information on that. Now, I am thinking about the customer. And being told to ignore that. Okay. Sure. So I printed the order. All 2,000 worth of it. It was a massive ordeal which I knew was all going into the trash. But I did what Kay asked. Before I left for the day, I checked our business email and saw the client didn't email us back. Also tried calling again. And no response. I took one of the books with me and left for the day. Rather than go straight home, I stopped at the business I knew would be selling or giving out what we were producing, since it was on the way, and showed the cashier. The cashier was absolutely horrified, and immediately contacted the manager, who was out for the day. The employee thanked me for going out of my way to inform them, and gave me some store credit which I used on some paintbrushes for minis. Don't ask to see them. I just started. Oh yeah. Did I mention this place was one of the local gaming stores I started going to? I knew those booklets weren't supposed to look like that. The fallout didn't happen until today. The order was completely thrown out. And we were forced to redo the entire thing at no charge. 2,000 down the drain. Kay, for the first time I can recall, tried to throw me under the bus when head office asked us what happened. But my coworkers supported me and I pointed out on the job ticket that I had actually failed the quality check. I had no idea how that order went to shipping. I don't know what has gotten into Kay lately, but she has been extremely off. Before people start offering advice on how to proceed and such, I have already started recording situations like this and other odd occurrences happening around the facility, and advising my coworkers to do the same. Also updating my resume, just in case. I really would not rather leave this job. But better safe than sorry. Update 1. The fact that some of you are immediately saying she may have a substance abuse problem is quite surprising. But I am going to take Kay aside with my supervisor in tow and ask her point blank what is going on. We'll update later today. Thanks to everyone who has actually been answering the print industry questions on my behalf. I had a game to run yesterday and couldn't keep an eye on this post. Mini update. Push to the ground. Reddit piling it upon me chanting miniature. Miniature. Eventually, a URL link falls out of Op's hand and falls to the ground. A picture of a poorly painted miniature with ugly color showing on it. I've had a manager try to pull this. When HR asked why I quit, I gave that as the reason. I will not work in an organization I cannot trust. How can you trust them to pay you? Or honor their other commitments like pay the taxes they withhold to the government? Give you sick time or vacation? Think they would keep you around if you were caught being dishonest? Employment is 100% trust-based. A boss who won't listen to you in your area of expertise, whether that's technical expertise or your relationship with the client, is not someone you want to work for. That goes double when she tries to blame you for her mistake. I know you don't want to leave this job, but these circumstances dictate that it's time to start considering alternatives. Hey, Was it not possible to go during the workday to ask the client about the booklets? I'm just wondering if the client location was close enough that it would be reasonable to run over there to check on this job before having printed the entire order. It is up to the manager. Really. Some aren't willing to let an employee drive to a client for fear they may idle/waste time. However, you seem like a really responsible, trustworthy employee that would be strictly play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I am a college student majoring in electrical engineering, and last quarter we had a group project. The partner I had would tell me that he would do his share, but then on the last minute, he would tell me that he didn't do any of the work and left me to pull an all-nighter getting everything done. I wasn't able to complete the project, and I told the professor everything, but I still got a very low score on a project that was worth 35% of the grade. I almost failed the class. Now we are all taking the next upper division course, and there will be large group project. We have a Discord for the students in the class so we can coordinate study groups and find partners for projects. I saw my old partner trying to find a partner for the project, so I decided to warn people not to partner with him, and now no one wants to partner with him. You know what they say? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Well, if it isn't the consequences of my actions come back to haunt me. Good looking out there warning everyone else on how you were stitched up previously. I believe the purpose of group project are to teach the students that they won't be able to rely on their coworkers once they start their careers. Had many a group projects back in my college days. Some great partners. One had a legitimate medical emergency who we saw pulling an all-nighter in the computer lab in a desperate attempt to still do their part. Also had the other end of the spectrum where the partners didn't care. Good looking out. I worked the night a project was due and I was the only one left to add my part in, so I went to Starbucks after sat in the parking lot to use the Wi-Fi and submit it. I emailed my professor letting him know if it was late it was my fault and to only take the point from me. I had a similar situation in undergrad with a 4-person research project. Thankfully I could show who inputted all the work, and the professor let me kick 2 of them out with a week to go. They both failed the class while my friend and I got an A. Highly satisfying. Group projects. The bane of my existence. I hate them because I have high standards for myself. And they never approach those standards. Then they force me to work on other people's timelines, which ultimately stresses me out, causing me to procrastinate more than usual. I like being self-destructive on my own timeline.